is the third in a series that we started several months ago, the fundamentals of the Jewish home, Yesodot Habayit HaYehudi, which we began with Kashrut, then Taharat HaMishpacha, and now Shabbat. The dietary laws, family purity laws, and now Shabbat. And I explained back then, in the very introduction, that if one wants to recognize an observant Jew, all he needs to see are these three areas. If you are aware of a specific Jew who maintains these three areas properly, he keeps kosher at home and outside, he keeps family purity laws, he and his wife, and they keep Shabbat, you know that this is an observant Jew. You don't have to check to see if he puts on tefillin, if he washes his hands, if he does other things. If he keeps these three, you can assume that he keeps everything else. It doesn't mean that he's strict. You can't know if somebody's strict or lax just by observing these three, but this gives you an idea what kind of a person you're dealing with. A Jew, of course, needs to fulfill all the commandments that he's committed to, but these three, I call them the fundamentals because of what they say, of what they represent. They tell you a lot about the individual. Of the three, you'll be surprised, Shabbat says the most. Of the three areas, which are all fundamentals, and they all represent or demonstrate how observant the Jew is, Shabbat represents much more than the other two. And you will see why as we go along. So I'm going to begin with a quote, a very difficult quote to understand by Chazal. In the Gemara it says as follows: Goy she-Shabbat, a non-Jew who keeps Shabbat, chayav mitah. He deserves the death penalty. Why is it so? What's wrong with keeping Shabbat? Why can't a Goy who chooses to keep Shabbat keep Shabbat? After all, if he were to choose to keep kosher, nobody would say anything. If he wants to go to the mikveh, nobody would say anything. Only Shabbat. The Goy keeps Shabbat, he's chayav mitah. In other words, he's not allowed to keep Shabbat. They have the 7 Noachite laws, the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, and that's it. They want to volunteer and do other things. They want to do tzedakah. They want to be nice people. They want to observe other mitzvot. Fine, that's okay if they choose to. They don't have to. Shabbat, not only don't they have to, they cannot, even if they chose to. The answer to this question is more towards the end of the lecture. But just remember that that's the question that we're beginning with, and you will understand the answer when we get to it. So let's begin by understanding another Gemara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that Matana Tova Yesh li bebet Nazai, I have a very special gift in my treasure home. The Shabbat Shema, the name of this gift is called Shabbat, and I wish to give it to the Jewish people. Hashem is telling this to Moshe Rabbeinu, go and let them know that I'm about to give them a very precious gift, a gift that I have in my treasure house. Something that is kept in your treasure house is obviously something very precious. And this precious gift, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give to the Jewish nation. So let me ask you, why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu calling this a gift? I have a gift to give them. When somebody wants to give you a gift, what is he saying? What is the meaning behind gift? I want to give them Shabbat. I want to give them another mitzvah. No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is about to give them Shabbat, and he's calling it a gift. I want to give them this gift. Special? Yeah, but why is he calling this a gift? Very good. I guess you're a sensitive person, right? You know what it means when somebody gives you a gift. When he gives you a gift, he means that he loves you, he cares for you, he's concerned about you, he wants to keep a kesher with you, he's interested in you. That's the simple basic meaning of what a gift is. Who gives you a gift? Somebody who really cares for you, somebody who thinks about you, right? That is the simple meaning of a gift. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us a gift, which indicates that he loves us, he's concerned about us, he cares for us. That is the first idea behind giving a gift. What's another idea? Whenever one receives a gift, supposedly, if one knows how to choose a gift, the gift is chosen that it should have a to'elet. It should be useful. You don't just give anything. When you give a gift, you give something useful. I know in Brazil there's a saying, people used to receive gifts from friends that were useless, and there would be an expression in Portuguese, this is to transfer over to somebody else. This particular gift is to give over to someone else. This isn't meant to keep. In other words, it has no use. What am I going to do with it? It's one of those gifts that you put in the closet, or one of these days you give it to someone else. A real gift, hopefully, the one who's giving it planned it out. He knows what he's giving. It's a useful gift. It has usefulness. That's number 2. And number 3, when the one who gives us the gift, he intends it to be for us and not for anybody else. That is why he's giving it to us, and not to anybody else. It's a very special gift, as you mentioned. It's special. It's meant for us, and it's not meant for anybody else. Now, the one who's giving the gift also usually has in mind that the gift should be nitzchi, it should be eternal, it should be forever. It's not meant for you to have it one day and to throw it out the next day. Does it look nice if you throw away a gift? No. So hopefully, that's what he's thinking. If he's giving you a gift, and he's giving it to you because he loves you, is because hopefully you will keep it. It's something that was meant to be kept eternally, not to be thrown away, not to be discarded. And hopefully the one who's giving the gift also expects that the one who's on the receiving end will appreciate what this gift is all about. He will have an understanding that this is not just meant, as a souvenir or something insignificant. No, this is something to be appreciated. It's well thought out of. There's something good about this. This last point of appreciation, that one needs to appreciate a gift that is received, is seen in another Gemara that says something very similar. The other Gemara says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Jewish people 3 gifts, besides Shabbat. What are the 3 gifts? Torah, Eretz Yisrael, Ve'olam Haba. These are 3 gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to the Jewish nation only. But then the Gemara adds one more thing after the 3 gifts, that these 3 gifts, as opposed to Shabbat, Nitnu al Yidei Yisurim. The only way you can acquire those gifts is through Yisurim, through pain and suffering. In other words, you didn't just hand it to you, you have to work hard for it. In order to acquire the Torah, to possess it, to be well versed in it, you have to work hard, you have to learn day and night. It doesn't just come to you, you don't just inherit it. The same is true with Olam Haba. You have to work hard in order to have a share to the world to come. It's not free. It's still a gift because it's something valuable that you get and nobody else gets. You get because Hashem loves you and wants you to have it, right? So it still has all those common ideas with gifts. But these 3 gifts are acquired only on Yidei Surim. And the other one was Eretz Yisrael. It's not easy to live in Israel. It's not easy to move there, to make Aliyah. It's difficult. Now, why these 3 are B'Yisurim? Why did Hashem make it difficult to acquire these 3? Anybody want to guess? If you work hard for something, hopefully you'll appreciate it. Obviously, the reward is also portion to the difficulty, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu intended to remind us here that these, even though they're gifts and they're special, they're very valuable and so forth, nevertheless, I give it to you on condition that you work hard for them. Why? Because that will show me how much you really want it. If somebody moves to Israel only because he has a job offer there, not because he's idealistic, not because of his love for the land, but because of a job offer. Let's say he's fired. Don't you agree with me that he'll leave? He'll look for another country. Why is he going to leave Israel? It's Eretz Yisrael. Because his original move there was for the job offer, or because he was running away from anti-Semitism. Regardless, if it's not for the real reason, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me this land, because this land belongs to me, because this is where I need to be, if it's not for idealistic reasons, it's going to be very difficult for that individual to say that if things get bad. Things get bad, people move, unless they're attached. And attachment is, if you love the place, if you know what the place is for, why Hashem gave it to you to begin with. That is true with anything, exactly. The what? Right. Sure, it's valid for anything. If you really love something, then you'll work to acquire it despite the difficulty. Right? If a husband loves his wife, even though she's giving him a hard time, she's ill. She's ill. She needs a lot of help and a lot of care, but he loves her. He's going to take care of her. Will he leave her? Will he divorce her? Hopefully not. If he does, he doesn't love her. Now, even though I wasn't planning to speak about it because it's a little bit different, but I did speak about it in the past, let me ask you a very difficult question. Psychologists have an argument about this. Can a husband love his wife and cheat on her? Or can a husband cheat and still love his wife? Is it possible? I knew the woman would say no. How about the men? Okay, so the psychologists have an argument. Some psychologists say it's impossible, and some say it is possible. Let's not get into the reasons why. We're concerned not with what psychologists say, but what do the Torah say? What do the Chachamim have to say about them? What is their opinion? Their opinion is very simple. If you really love somebody, you would never do anything that you know would harm that person's feelings. If you know in advance that what you're about to do, that what you're about to do will hurt the feelings of the other individual, and you still do it, your love is incomplete. If you may still love her 85%, but not 100%. What is that? No, you know that if they would know, this would very much disturb them. It would hurt their feelings. If somebody's love for another individual is complete, he would never think of doing something that would hurt the other person.
that are not complete with the relationship, that their husband can even marry another woman or be with another woman that is not married to another woman.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the original statement that I made, right?
Cheating means going when she...
Cheating means to betray the trust of the marriage. The marriage was between you and me, and if I do something that betrays that trust, that's called cheating. That's called, the love is not 100% there. If there's a situation that the rabbis would allow for somebody to marry a second wife because of the circumstance, that's already something else. He's entitled to have a normal, decent life, right? So that is an exception, but it does not negate or take away from the original statement. Because the circumstances are different. I'm talking about a normal situation where a husband promised that he's marrying this woman, and here he betrays that trust by doing something that he knows would hurt her feelings. So the love cannot be 100%. Maybe it's 80%, but not 100%. Okay? Yeah. Yeah.
Why does Hashem give Shabbat to Jewish people before Matan Torah? Why give it before Matan Torah?
The Jewish people receive various mitzvot before Matan Torah to prepare them. Right? Because the circumcision was from the days of Avraham Avinu. Right? Shabbat is one of the most important mitzvot. And now you will understand, once we get into it, you will understand the significance of Shabbat, of what it means. But I wanted to point this out over here, that those things that are difficult to acquire, if one nevertheless persists in acquiring them, what is he showing, what is he proving? That he really wants this, he really cares for it, he really loves it. Hashem wants to see, in those three areas, those three gifts, do you really care about Olam Haba? Do you really care about Eretz Yisrael? Do you really care about Shabbat? Even though Shabbat is no Yisurim, but we will see how Hashem is able to see if one loves Shabbat or not. And do you really care about the Torah? Basically, if something is difficult and one persists, it means that he wants it, despite the difficulties. He loves it. It proves something. So Hashem is giving those three Al Yedei Yisurim to bring out the intention of the Jew of keeping or not keeping the Shabbat. Is he keeping it because he has to, or because he really wants to? Well, how am I going to tell? I'm going to make it difficult for him. I'm going to tempt him. He's a real estate broker, and I'm going to give him a deal that if he signs it on Shabbat, he makes 3% of $25 million. That's a lot of money, right? But he has to come sign on Shabbat. Otherwise, he loses the deal. How many people are going to be tempted? Only those who don't love the Shabbat. Those who don't have an attachment to the Shabbat, who don't value it enough, value the money more. What do you value more? So we're going to talk about these things. All right, but Shabbat is different than the three other gifts in a very important way. Shabbat is called an ot. The ot hi, b'ni uven b'nei Yisrael. It's a sign. We talked about mitzvot, mishpatim, chukim, that the commandments in the Torah are under various categories. What they all have in common is that they are mitzvot, they are commandments. But there are different types of commandments. Some are called mishpatim, which are ben adam l'chavero, between man and man. Some are called chukim, they are decrees. Decrees which we don't readily understand. The king decreed, we do it. Kosher, dietary laws. Why can't I eat alligator meat? What's wrong with alligator meat? It's not because it's unhealthy, there must be another reason. No, the Torah doesn't reveal all the reasons. The Torah commands us, so it's a hok. What are the qualities, the special qualities of the red heifer, paraduma, that it removes tumah? It's a hok, right? And even the arayot, why can't I marry certain women? It's also, in a way, a hok. Shabbat is called an ot. Besides being a mitzvah, it's also an ot, it's a sign. What does a sign do? So there are two signs over here. Shabbat is an ot between the Jewish people and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we have a very special relationship. It's like a marriage. And it's an ot that when we fulfill the mitzvot of Shabbat, we are testifying that God created the world in 6 days and he rested on 7 days. So Shabbat is a tremendous testament in itself. When one fulfills the Shabbat, he keeps the Shabbat, he's telling the entire world that Hashem created the world in 6 days and there was no Big Bang. Right? He basically is confirming the story of the Torah. Just like the Kippah makes a powerful statement that I believe in Hashem who's above me and I have respect for him. In the same way, when one keeps Shabbat, he's making a powerful statement. It's an oath and testifying that Hashem created the world. But it's also testifying or demonstrating that we have a strong relationship. Hashem has a strong relationship with the Jewish people. This relationship, the rabbis tell us, is compared to a chatan giving a haba'at to the kala, to a ring. So of all the mitzvot in the Torah, and each mitzvah is like a string that attaches us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But of all the mitzvot, Shabbat is like a ring. Why does a woman wear a ring? The ring that she received underneath the chuppah. It's a sign that she's married. She's not single. Don't approach her. Right? Don't ask her for a date. She's married. She's reserved. But that's for other people to know. But what about for herself? Does she need a reminder? Yes, she does. She needs to be reminded of her commitments to this marriage. That there is a purpose of why she got married, what her responsibilities are. So that is what the Shabbat is. It's a reminder to Am Yisrael of the special relationship we have to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as we will soon see, it's also intended to remind us what our real tachlit, our real purpose in life is. And it's not 8 to 5, the work that we do on a routine basis during the week. There is some other tachlit that we may not be aware of during the 6 days, except for Shabbat. On Shabbat, we can discover, believe it or not, you can discover what the tachlit of the whole creation is. If you allow yourself. If you allow yourself, you can discover it. It's something which is difficult, but not impossible to do during the 6 days. Something that is a lot easier to do on the 7th day, on Shabbat. So Shabbat is unique in that it forms a very powerful connection between the Jewish people and Hashem through the Shabbat, which is like a ring. Now, this powerful connection, what it generates, what it creates, as long as one keeps wearing the ring, is 3 things. It generates a love or a strong connection between the Jew and Hashem. It generates a partnership, and it generates or it demonstrates a certain trust between us and Hashem. The last 2, the trust and the partnership, I will leave towards the end. I want to concentrate a little bit more on how this kesher shows love, which we slightly touched on this with the example that I gave before, with the one not willing to hurt his wife, he won't do anything against her. But there are various ways where you can see how, by keeping Shabbat, you develop a loving relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As you know, in Shabbat, there are various concepts. One is called kavod, and one is called onig. Kavod Shabbat and onig Shabbat. Kavod is honor the Shabbat. How do you honor the Shabbat? By treating it with respect. You don't do what you're not supposed to do, and you do what you're supposed to do. Onig means to enjoy. How do you enjoy Shabbat? There's special food on Shabbat, there's special clothing on Shabbat, right? You rest on Shabbat. There's a lot of ways to show kavod and onig for Shabbat. One who loves a person also respects him, also gives him the honor, right? Shabbat is a day that if one really respects, as umechabed oto ume'aneg oto. In other words, he shows the proper respect, and he gives him a certain onig, a certain amount of enjoyment to show that this is not an ordinary day. This day stands out, and I have to show how this day stands out, and I do certain things. I drink wine, I buy halot, not only one halot, but I buy 2 halot. I have 3 meals, not 1 meal. I'm not cheap. I spend more for the meals of Shabbat. These are ways to show the kavod and the onig of Shabbat. Now, therefore, if these are ways to show the kavod of Shabbat, if one is mechalel Shabbat, if one desecrates the Shabbat, what is he showing? The exact opposite. That he has shu mezalzel, that he belittles, or that he betrays, as we said before, the Shabbat. In other words, if the way of showing kavod is by keeping the Shabbat properly, then if one does not do so, it has the opposite effect. It shows zilzul and a lack of kavod for the Shabbat. What does this compare to? That the rabbis tell us incredibly. What's the worst thing a kala can do to the chatan when she's engaged, not married? To give back the gift. What happens if the bride goes over to the groom's house, or she sends somebody, and what's in the package? Giving back all the gifts you gave me. What does that show? She has no more interest in it. One who does not keep the Shabbat, one who's mezalzel, who shows a lack of respect for Shabbat, it is like the kala who's saying, you know what, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I don't want this engagement anymore. I don't want this marriage. Here, take back all the gifts that you gave me. The Chafetz Chaim has another mashal which illustrates this a little bit more. We just said before the Shabbat is called the Ot, because the Ot makes this powerful statement. It's a reminder. It proves something. The Chafetz Chaim says, imagine there was once a store. Let's call it a hardware store. And on the outside there's a big sign, hardware store. And you want to go buy something there, and you find that the door is locked. You see merchandise inside, you see the sign. What are you going to think? The guy probably went on vacation. Maybe he's sitting Shiv'ah, somebody passed away in the family. You know, it's possible. Even though he's supposed to be open at this time, he's going to come back in a couple of days. The worst, maybe in a week. If he's on a long vacation, 2 weeks. What happens if you come back 3 weeks later, and not only do you see that the door is locked, but you also see that the sign is no longer there? What's your conclusion going to be? He's out of business. He closed shop. Chafetz Chaim says, when a Jew does not keep certain mitzvot, he fell for it. He didn't eat kosher once. Or he did something else against the Torah. He forgot to put on tefillin one day. It's like the door is locked, but it could be that he will come back eventually. He will do teshuvah and he will fix it. He will repair it. He's still Jewish, even if he did not keep a mitzvah. What happens if the Jew does not keep Shabbat? Then he's removing the sign. He's saying, I'm out of business. I'm closing up the shop. Because Shabbat is the sign. And tefillin is also a sign. And so is the brit milah for men. Right? So there are certain signs that if you drop them, it's like you're saying, I'm closing up the shop. This doesn't belong to me anymore. I'm giving back the gifts. Like the Kala giving back the gifts to the Hatan. He doesn't want this anymore. That is the effect, or that is the impression that is left when a Jew does not keep Shabbat. The exact opposite of the kavod, the respect of the love that he has for this relationship, he shows the opposite when he stops keeping it. When he shows he has no more in this world. Yeah, but the Shabbat, as you can see from what I'm saying, is so powerful that it speaks a lot more loudly. And it says a lot more in the tefillin or other mitzvot, which are also very important. Yeah. Now, Shabbat is so powerful that the rabbis tell us if a Jew were to only keep Shabbat, nothing else, the Shabbat is so powerful that it is capable of bringing him back to Tshuva. The same is true about the Torah. It's brought down elsewhere that if a Jew would learn Torah consistently, the light of the Torah will eventually bring him back. And Hashem says, I wish the Jewish people, if they stopped keeping the mitzvot, it would have been okay with me if they stopped keeping everything except for the Torah. Had they continued to learn the Torah, Ha'or Shabbat Torah, the light of the Torah would have eventually brought them back. So there are certain mitzvot that have a special segula, special quality, the characteristics, that are able to bring back the Jew. They're able to strengthen his emunah. And one of them is Shabbat. Shabbat is one of the most powerful, perhaps the most powerful, in bringing back a Jew to Tshuva. Even if he stopped keeping everything else. If he keeps Shabbat properly, and I'll prove it to you in a moment, eventually he will come back. Now, a Baal Teshuvah, an individual who is returning to his roots, who wants to do Teshuvah, he wants to get closer. Many times he's confused. Where should he start? Where should he begin? You can't just say, I'm going to do everything. You know what the rabbi said? If you say, I'm going to do everything, you're going to end up doing nothing. Right? Take a little bit upon yourself, a little bit at a time, and then eventually you'll be able to do everything. Never take everything at once, otherwise you'll never get started. So the question is, which mitzvah should a Jew begin with? Now, it all depends on the circumstances. If one is having a very difficult time, and it's a man, you can put on tefillin. If he's still not holding by it, but he's interested, he has an interest, he realizes this is the truth, this is what his father or grandfather used to do, okay, I want to do something. So depending on the circumstances, it might just be easier to do tefillin, tzitzit. But if one who's already serious, one who's already beginning to learn, one who already wants to fulfill, there's no doubt that he should start with Shabbat. Because Shabbat is what will give him the kochot, the energy, the strength to do everything else. Once you begin with Shabbat, you're committing yourself. Once you do the Shabbat, you will have what it takes eventually to do more and more. You will want to do more. If one begins to do this, he keeps closer, it's very nice, it's beautiful, let him do whatever he can. But he may stop by that. He may never have the courage to do more. And I'll tell you what. One of the most difficult experiences that Balei Teshuvah has. You know what? What it is? What is the most difficult experience that prevents Jews from doing real Teshuvah? After they're convinced that this is the truth. We're not talking about those who are not convinced yet. Anybody know? Pressure. Peer pressure. Yeah. What's the neighbor going to say? What are my peers at work going to say when they see me coming in with a kippah? There's a lot of pressure. Not everybody is strong enough to resist the pressure. Right? So they start doing little things that nobody's aware of. You see, nobody can see it underneath. It's easy to do. And it only costs $5-10, depending if it's wool or cotton. Right? It's cheap too. To make a blessing before you eat. The worst that can protect you is talking to the wall. So what? Yeah. You can always do it quietly and discreetly too. So there are many mitzvot that you can do quietly. Nobody will suspect you. Shabbat is more difficult. Because if a Jew was used to going to the movies, doing all sorts of things on his day off from work, that's his day off. So he's having other difficulties here, letting go of his old routines, of his old bad habits. So there's a lot of pressures and a lot of hurdles to overcome. If a Jew is able to overcome all this, then everything else is easy. You just run through it. What's everything else? To learn Torah. It's a man every day, 15 minutes, a half an hour. Is that a big deal? To make a blessing before you put an apple in your mouth, is that a big deal? To say Birkat HaMazon after you ate bread, is that a big deal? It takes 2-3 minutes. To put on tefillin in the morning and say Shema Yisrael, does that take a lot? These are easy compared to Shabbat. Right? Shabbat, even though it's not difficult, it's beautiful. For those of us who keep it, I wish every day was Shabbat. Right? Is it hard? No. But it's hard for those who are coming from from a different lifestyle, who have to let go of everything and get used to a different lifestyle. The Shabbat can't go anywhere. Well, you could, but you can't do everything. So that's the difficulty that they have to overcome. But if they overcome this difficulty, this hurdle, everything else is easy. So that should be, if possible, if the individual is serious, that should be what he should tackle first. Yeah.
That context of my other question.
Yeah.
How do we explain Rabbi nothing like it? Why would they leave if they're tied to Shabbat and they're tied to the Torah they're learning? Why would they leave? He said if you're attached to Shabbat, you're attached to the Torah, you have no desire to leave.
Well, that's going to eventually lead us to something called bitachon, which is the other aspect that I said generated or created by keeping a Shabbat. There's a partnership, there's a love, and there's a certain trust or confidence, bitachon in Hashem. And I'll get to that. But I'll say something which is also related to that. We just said that Shabbat should be the first mitzvah for Baal Shabbat to tackle. Because if he keeps Shabbat and he overcomes the difficulties, that will make it easy for him to keep all the other mitzvot. But it also works the other way around. If a Jew leaves Shabbat, then it makes it easy for him to do all the averot and to stop doing all the mitzvot. Because a Jew does not become secular overnight. As I explained in the past, first he takes off his kippah, then he stops eating kosher, then he stops making blessings, right? Until eventually he drops everything. But if a Jew were to drop Shabbat first, or in the very beginning, that is like a snowball. Domino effect, he drops everything. And to prove this point, I've spoken about this in the past, it's unfortunate that you can trace back in history, American history, all the European Jews especially, who came over to this country at the turn of the century, to America, from Europe. They were tempted. They had a difficult time. Before Eisenhower, they needed to work 6 days a week, right? Today we have long weekends, Shabbat and Sunday, even for Goyim. Their days off. Back then, if you didn't come to work on Saturday, you were fired on Monday, you got your pinkslip. And what did a Jew do who just came from Europe, and who was poor and had to provide for a family of several children? Parnassah. I have to bring parnassah, livelihood to my home. I have no choice. Of course you have a choice. Hashem provides parnassah. Where's your emunah? Where's your bitachon? Your faith in Hashem? Now, what did the many Sephardic Jews who came from Syria, who apparently were more God-fearing, I have to say, they said, I have to work on Shabbat? Sorry, I'm not working for you. I'm going to work for myself. That is what many Sephardic Jews became peddlers. I have to work on Shabbat if I work for you. I'm not going to work for you. I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to struggle, even though I don't speak English well. Hashem will provide just like He provided for my parents and for my grandparents. Now, what happened to those Jews who stopped keeping Shabbat? I assure you, I wish I would not have to assure you this, but it's a fact. Their children and their grandchildren are no longer Jews. They have assimilated. They have intermarried. And if they're still Jews, they're completely secular. But many of them have intermarried. Why? Because their father or their grandfather stopped keeping Shabbat. That had a snowball effect. Shabbat was dropped, everything was dropped, including assimilation. Those Jews who kept Shabbat, who fought for Shabbat, looked at their children and their grandchildren, most of them are religious. They may not be the most observant ones because of their own pressures that they have, their personal pressures, but they haven't assimilated. They still go to shul once in a while. They still are aware of their Jewishness. It all starts with Shabbat. Shabbat has the power to bring a Jew back, and if Chaz v'Shalom once drops it, it is possible for him to drop everything after that.
All right.
Yeah.
One more thing on my question. Because believe the Shabbat was brought up with it as a teenager or
Right.
It takes tremendous change in outlook. It must be peer pressure to get you to
There's a lot of pressures. Remember, one of them will be Parnassah, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But there's all sorts of pressures when you go in the outside world, right? And I told you how it begins. It doesn't begin with Shabbat. All those who were very attached to Shabbat at their home, they saw a beautiful Shabbat, they participated at a Shabbat table, they went to shul, they don't drop Shabbat like that overnight. It's a chain reaction. Those that you are thinking about, they dropped something else before they dropped Shabbat. It didn't happen overnight. But how do they still drop Shabbat? That's because of all sorts of pressures that people have. And if your emunah is not strong, and you do not recharge your spiritual batteries by learning Quran on a daily basis, then you forget what your real purpose in life is. You think making money is the purpose, is the taqlid. But it's not. Alright, now we have to understand what Shabbat is all about. We spoke about how beautiful it is, how important it is, how precious, that it's a gift, that it demonstrates the kesher, the bond between the Jewish people and the Almighty. But what is Shabbat? The rabbis tell us Shabbat is Had Mishishim Me'olam Haba. It's 1/60th of Olam Haba. You want to have a taste or feeling of what Olam Haba is like? Taste Shabbat. Shabbat you will experience 1/60th of Olam Haba, of the world to come. And what's the world to come? The world to come is a very special world. It's a perfect world. There's no pain, there's no suffering. Everything is according to the original blueprint that God had for this world. Right? It's a blessed world. Shabbat, therefore, is a day that when we keep it, when we observe the Mitzvot Shabbat, what we're sensing or what we're experiencing is something called shlemut, completeness. Just like Olam Haba is complete and it's not lacking, Shabbat is complete and it's not lacking. That is why Hashem created the world in 6 days. Each day had a function, had a purpose. On Shabbat there's no need to work because it's complete. It's not lacking anything. But it's more than that. It's a blessed day. You will find the words that are associated with Shabbat are the words Vayevarech, Vaykadesh. He blessed and he sanctified. To sanctify something means to elevate it. This is above everything else. What does it mean to bless this day? Well, I think most of you remember what happened to the first 6 days. They were cursed. Right? In that incident where man was cursed, where the human being was cursed, the woman has her own difficulties in childbirth, the man has his difficulties in bringing home food. All of this is only true for when? For 6 days a week. Those 6 days have a kilalah, as opposed to Shabbat. Hashem says, okay, even though I cursed, even though I made life difficult for you in Olam Hazeh, that's only true for 6 days, not the 7th day. Why not the 7th day? What's so special about the 7th day that makes it like 1/60th of Olam Haba? If you look at the Torah, you will find many cases of the number 7. There's Sheva Berachot, 7 blessings. There's Sheva Nerot of the Hanukkah, Sheva Yemei Nida, 7 days of Nida, of Avelut, of Shemitah, right? 7 is special. What's so special about 7? 7 is holy. What does holy mean? If you ever look at a Magen David, you will see 6 corners. And on Sukkot, what do we do to the 6 corners? We shake the lulav to all 6 corners, right? North, south, east, west, bottom, top, right? All the 6, I didn't say in the right order, but all the 6 corners, what do they represent? 6 represents the Olam Hazeh, the material world. Everything that is material, everything that is Olam Hazeh is represented by the number 6. 6 is the maximum. Once you go above 6, the number 7, that's spiritual. That's the Olam HaRuchani. 8 is already Olam Haba. So the spiritual world is represented by number 7. The material world is represented by 6, or up to 6. So 7 is spiritual. Kadosh Baruch Hu is giving us 1 day a week, that's a spiritual day, to be able to experience what Olam Haba is like, and for us to remember that when we work during the 6 days, which is representative of Olam Hazeh, we are working towards Olam Haba. So what is the tachlit? Is the tachlit the 6th day or the 7th day? It's the 7th, because we work towards the 7th. That's why the 7th day is at the end of the week. We work 6 days a week towards the 7th. The 7th therefore completes the week. The 6 days represent Olam Hazeh. What do we do in Olam Hazeh? We prepare for Olam Haba. Everything that we do, all the mitzvot that we fulfill, what is it for? Does Hashem need it? Hashem doesn't need the mitzvot. He doesn't need all of this. He wants us to have a chelek l'Olam Haba. He wants us to prepare for that. It shouldn't be for free. He wants us to work for it. When do we do this work? During Olam Hazeh, during the 6 days of the week. Shabbat, therefore, is the shlemut, is the ultimate goal. Shabbat is therefore 1/60th of Olam Haba, to remind us that that is the tachlit, that is what we're working for. That day, there's no need for you to work. It's complete. And it's blessed. There's no kelalah. Hashem rested on the 7th day because there's no kelalah. There's nothing for him to do on the 7th day. The Olam Hazeh is complete. And Shabbat is like Olam Haba, meaning that there's a shlemut, there's a completeness, that there's nothing for you to do. Yeah. That's a beautiful idea, that a woman who gives birth on Shabbat should have no pain. I would agree with that, but Hashem had something else in mind apparently. That birth pangs or childbirth will always be difficult, right? There's no distinction. Shabbat is a unique day in that we're supposed to do something to experience it. Even though, in reality, there's some truth to what you're saying. On Shabbat itself, one does feel different. Even the food tastes different because it's blessed. So there is blessing on that day, but unfortunately, certain things still continue even on that day. Life goes on. We're still in this world. We're still in this mitziut. But it is a blessed day. Blessing. What does blessing mean? Blessing means that there's nothing missing, nothing lacking. That's an important point to remember because of what we're going to say next. The day is not lacking at all. Because the day is not lacking and the day is blessed, it has the Koch as well as to be mashpia on all the days of the week. So the parnasah therefore comes from Shabbat, not from the 6 days a week. One may think, I'm working during the 6 days a week. No, yeah, you may be working physically then, but the beracha is going to come from Shabbat. Shabbat is blessed, it's a blessed day, and it has therefore the koach to be mashpia. It's not lacking anything. It's complete. And it also has the ability to be mashpia on the rest of the days of the week. So Shabbat gives us the opportunity to experience Olam Haba. Who is the one that experiences that? Not the body. The neshama. The neshama is spiritual. The body is physical. Only the neshama can experience what Shabbat is. How do we allow the neshama to experience something that it does not experience during the rest of the week? By not doing melachot, by not doing certain functions, of which there are 39, which the rabbis learned from the Melechet HaMishkan. This is what we'll be covering in the next couple 10, 12, 14 weeks or so. The various melachot that are prohibited in the Torah, which we learn from the Mishkan, total of 39, plus the Toladot. There is avot, main categories plus subcategories. In addition to that, there is what the rabbis and the prophets added. As the Pasuk says, in order to show the true kavod to Shabbat, there are certain additional things that the prophets and the rabbis told us to stay away from, which Bezat Hashem will get to. All of this to strengthen the bond between us and Hashem, and to make sure we don't fall into the trap of doing something that may lead us to do an avon. Right, the body participates too. But in talking about the Yom Menucha, which Shabbat is called, it's a day of rest, people misunderstand it. It's not a day of physical rest completely. And let me prove it to you. You see this table over here? It's a very heavy table. It must weigh a couple 100 pounds. You are allowed to carry it, you and somebody else, from this end of the room to that end of the room. There's no problem. Even though it's laborious, but you're not allowed to carry a handkerchief outside in the street. A handkerchief, a tissue. But this is laborious, this is difficult work, because Shabbat has nothing to do necessarily with physical labor. It has to do with melachot. What these 39 melachot have in common is these are functions. And by performing these functions, these jobs, you are creating something. You are accomplishing something. You are making a yetzirah. You are forming something. These formations or these functions, if you were to do them on Shabbat, they would interfere with you being able to experience what the Shabbat is. Even though they're not difficult. Today we have buttons. You press a button, the light turns on. What's so difficult about it? It has nothing to do with difficulty. It's the idea that if you perform these functions, which are associated with Olam Hazeh, with the 6 days of the week, if you do them on the Shabbat, you're defeating the whole spirit of Shabbat. Hashem wants you to experience something on Shabbat. And he said the only way you can experience it fully is if you desist from these functions. If you were to introduce them on Shabbat, then Shabbat would be a regular day. So even turning on the light, you're not rubbing stones to accomplish fire, to bring about fire. Still, the turning on the light, they're doing these yetzirot, these melachot, these functions. They're bringing about these results that come about through these functions. These results, if they are brought about, would interfere with you experiencing the spirituality of Shabbat. So in order for us to experience Olam Haba, in order for us to experience a blessed day, we have to desist from these melachot, from these functions, from these jobs. Okay, so now we can perhaps understand a little bit the question that we had in the very beginning. So why can't a goy keep Shabbat? Remember the question? A goy is not allowed to keep Shabbat. It wasn't given to him, but why can't he keep it anyway? Shabbat is a gift, he said. And this gift shows a loving relationship between Borei Olam and Am Yisrael. It's a kesher nesuin. It's a tabat, it's a ring. A goy cannot partake in this. It doesn't belong to him. But why not? Because on Shabbat, what is the Jew doing? He's also forming a partnership. Remember I said before that there are three components here. There's the loving relationship, there's the partnership, and there is the what? And the trust. When a Jew keeps Shabbat, besides the kesher ahava that he has, besides this ring that he's wearing on his hand, what is he doing? He's forming a partnership. He's a partner with Hashem. What kind of a partnership? First of all, he's testifying that God created the world. Whose job is that? Only the Jews. The Jewish nation was given a job, letaken ta'olam, to fix this world, to remove the het of Adam HaRishon, the sin of Adam HaRishon, to repair this world, to bring about a change, a spiritual change. So we are partners with Hashem. Since this is our job, it's not the goy's job. He has no right, therefore, to take something that does not belong to him, that he has no part of it. He's not a partner. He was not giving the ring. What is he mixing in? What is he taking something that does not belong to him, that is so precious? It's not just any mitzvah. It is something very special. Besides the fact that there's a certain amount of trust over here. This trust only belongs between us and Borei Olam. This is something that the goyim do not have, and I'm going to get to that next. But the point here is that a goy has no part of this. He is responsible for working 7 days a week, not 6. Why? Because for him there's a kelalah 7 days. Am Yisrael therefore received this gift, which is to overturn the kelalah 1 day a week, for them to experience what it would be like had there not been a het Adam HaRishon, and what it will be like in Olam Haba. And if they do it, they will continuously remember what their tachlit is. That the tachlit, the purpose, the destiny of life is not work, but 1 day a week, let go of all the work, spend some time with your family and kids, rest a little bit, and think about what you're really supposed to do in life. How you are a servant of Hashem, how this is only a temporary world, how we're working towards achieving a Chelek Olam Haba shared to the world to come. All of this is a spiritual experience that you can only sense if you stop working. So if you do that, you will have a better idea of what your Tachlit is. This Tachlit belongs to the Jew, and in part would also belong to the Goy, because the Goy, if he does everything correctly, will have a Chelek Olam Haba too. But he is not given the gift to stop and think about it. If he does it on his own, he says, I have to do this. This is my duty. God created me in His image. I'm a very special part of His creation. Right? Fine. He does everything properly. He has a Chelek Olam Haba, but he's not given the opportunity to stop and to have a share of this blessed day, to be able, for his neshama to be able to experience it. The only way the neshama can experience it is if the body, the physical body, is dormant, not completely asleep, but not working and not immersed in all these materialistic functions, which all they do is interfere with the person and make you forget what he's here for. He thinks that he has to make money. I have to make money, make more money. Why? Because you got to pay taxes. So you got to live something for the kids. You got to build a home. You got to buy a car. Then you got to buy another car. Then you have to have a summer home somewhere or a beach home. It's never ending for somebody who does not stop and think. But the one who stops and thinks, and he's fortunate to have the Shabbat on a weekly basis, hopefully he will remember what his real tachlit is, and that is a spiritual life and not a materialistic life. The material work that we do is only a means, not an end. Shabbat reminds us of what the true end is. Yes. He can try. He can try. And obviously, if he were to do so, he's Hayav Mitah, because he has no part of this. It doesn't belong to him. This is a special matana that only belongs to the Jewish nation.
Whenever someone is converted, he has to make through one malach at a time. He's coming to Jew before he...
Exactly. Right. Okay, so we have a partnership, we have a special bond, and also there's a certain amount of trust here. How does this trust come about? We said that this is a blessed day. A blessed day means that there's no gira'on ve'en chisaron. Yom shel shlemut. It's a complete day. Nothing is lacking. But there are many Jews, unfortunately, who say that if they don't work on the Saturday, that is their best day. They're going to lose a lot of money. Hashem says, no, on the contrary. Because of Shabbat, you will receive barakah, you will receive parnasah. The one who therefore works on Shabbat, who is he compared to? The Chafetz Chaim says he's compared to an individual who had a barrel of wine. In the barrel, in order to get the wine, you have a faucet that you open up and you get your wine. Now, how many gallons of wine are in the barrel? In the barrel, let's say 20 gallons. Comes along this Jew who wants to work on Shabbat, says, you know what, I'm going to get more than 20 gallons. I'm going to open up a second faucet on the other side. Is he going to get more? He's going to get the same exact amount. Because on the Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah already decided how much parnasah every Jew is going to have. Depending on one's mazal, he's pretty much limited to how much he can earn, no matter what degree he has, no matter how many years he went to college. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides all of this. So he thinks that he's a smart aleck. He's going to work on a day that Hashem says not to work. And he's going to make more money. And he's going to prove it to you too. He's going to show you all the money he made. What's going to happen a week or two from now? You're going to have a hefty doctor's bill, or a mechanic's bill, or a plumber's bill. It's going to take away all that profit that he made that has no berachah. Anyone who works on Shabbat, there's no berachah. Shabbat is a blessed day, and blessing means that there's no chisaron. On the contrary, it is able, like the Zohar says, to provide parnasah for the rest of the week. Shabbat is mashpia. Shabbat is the one that provides berachah for the rest of the week. Right? So you're right. In Shabbat there's something called zachor v'shamor. The shamor means that you observe the laws, that you don't do something you're not supposed to do. Then there's something called zachor, to make the kiddush, to treat it properly, to respect it. So if you stopped working, you didn't do any melachah, then you're keeping the shamor part, but you're not keeping the zachor part. You have to sanctify this day. No, that was the question. That's what he was asking. What happens if you don't work on Shabbat, but you don't observe everything else? No, there's kiddush, there's Abdallah, after Shabbat, there's Nerot Shabbat. And that brings us to the point of Nerot Shabbat. Because Shabbat umetukan, it's complete, it's not lacking anything. It is a complete day. It has no curse, no kelala. A woman lights candles as the Shabbat approaches. Because what did she do? What did Chava do? She brought about sadness to the world, death to the world, as a result of her action, of listening to the advice of the Nachash of the Yetzer Hara, and not following the commandment of Hashem, a simple commandment. She lights the candle. What does the candle do? It brings about light and simcha and joy to the home. And a woman therefore has to be very careful with these mitzvot. Nida, chala, v'adlakat haner. Because a woman does not have many mitzvot. Therefore these three are very powerful for her. Not only are they mitzvot, they also accomplish certain things. The nerot, for example, are a tikkun for her. She has to therefore be very careful with lighting candles on time, not pushing it off. 18 minutes before Shabbat. or she needs to go a little earlier, but not later. She should be very careful with riding on time, and definitely not on Shabbat, right? With challah meaning not to eat challah, but if you bake challah a certain amount, about 5 pounds worth, you have to fulfill the mitzvah of prashat challah, or removing a portion of it which you burn, making the berachah. You have to be careful with this. And with midah, as the rabbis tell us, as the Mishnah says, a woman who's not careful with these three things, they can accuse her. And this accusation is a source of trouble to her at childbirth. At childbirth, a woman can die as a result of being accused of being lax in these 3 areas. Childbirth is a very dangerous time. And whenever one is exposed to danger, there's accusations or avoid. So a woman, therefore, who's careful with these 3 things is protected. Not, she does not have the same protection. The adlakat nerot that we're talking about right now is for her a tikkun, and it adds a tremendous amount of shalom. It brings about a tremendous amount of shalom to the whole house. Especially in those days there was no electricity, you needed light. Shabbat was a day that you could not live in darkness. And if a woman for some reason cannot do it, then the husband has to do it. Alright, the last point that I want to cover is this trust that we talked about. There's emunah and there's bitachon. Many Jews have faith in Hashem, they believe in Hashem, but they don't necessarily rely on Him. It requires a tremendous amount of effort, patience, diligence, to develop this trust in Hashem. You're not born with it. We are taught emunah at home. Bitachon is not easily taught. You have to acquire this. You have to teach it to yourself. You have to come to the conclusion that bitachon is part of the emunah. A Jew who does not keep Shabbat because of parnasah reasons, not only does he lack bitachon, his emunah is very, very lax too. It's a very weak emunah. His emunah, and a person's emunah is not complete unless it has bitachon Hashem. Bitachon means not only do I believe that you exist, I know it for a fact. Actually, our emunah is a fact, we know it, but I also trust in you. Why is this trust important? Because we know for a fact that God exists. It's a fact. It makes sense. Our forefathers believed in it. Hashem proved it through miracles. We know it. It's a fact. You believe in something that you don't know for a fact. I believe you. No, for us it's a yediyah, it's a fact. Bitachon, what we're saying is, you promised us something. You promised us that you will bring the Mashiach. You promised us parnasah. That I don't know for a fact. That you promised. On that I have to rely on you. So in order to complete the emunah, a person has to have bitachon Hashem. Shabbat, a Jew does not work. Or Shemitah, a whole year he does not work in this field. It shows a tremendous amount of bitachon Hashem. And for those of you who still have doubts about the Berachah of Shabbat, remember what we say every Erev Shabbat. That the greatest segula for parnasah of everything, of all the mitzvot, is Dafka Shabbat. As we say, Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelecha ki hi mekor ha-berachah. Just remember, observe the Shabbat, go towards the Shabbat, show her the respect. Why? Because he mekor ha-berachah, Shabbat, of all the mitzvot, is the source of all blessings. The source of parnasah tovah, if one is having a difficult time, the first thing that he should check is he keeping Shabbat right or not? If Shabbat is not kept properly, he's wasting his time by going to get a blessing from a rabbi. The rabbi's blessing cannot come about, cannot be fulfilled if he, in one area of the Torah, is not strong. But parnasah, especially the area of Shabbat, is not strong, he's going to have a hard time with. So parnasah is directly related to one's observance of Shabbat. If one keeps Shabbat, that's the segula that he will be blessed for the following 6 days. Okay, next week, B'ezrat Hashem, we will begin with the melachot, the 39 melachot, which we will expand on. I don't know how many we can cover every week, but we will expand on every single one as to they relate to present-day circumstances that we live in. You know, the technologies that we have, and what can be done and what cannot be done based on the Chod Shabbat. Any questions? All right, so B'ezrat Hashem, see you next week.